Elena Kane stepped into the penthouse suite with her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat, knowing that if anyone discovered she was not supposed to be at this exclusive poker game, her entire career in hospitality management would be over before it truly began. She had been working as the assistant manager at the Meridian Hotel for 8 months, and tonight she was filling in for her boss who had caught the flu. The instructions were simple. Ensure the VIP poker game on the 40th floor ran smoothly, keep the drinks flowing, and under no circumstances disturb the players. What her boss had failed to mention was that one of the regular players had canceled last minute, and the host, a man named Adrian Jensen, had looked directly at her when she arrived and said, "You play poker." Elena should have said no. She should have explained that she was just there to manage the service staff, but something in his ice-blue eyes and the challenging tilt of his jaw made her respond before her brain caught up. "I do." "Then sit down. We need a sixth." Now she was seated at a table with 5 men in custom suits that probably cost more than her annual salary, trying to remember everything her father had taught her about Texas Hold'em before he passed away 3 years ago. The penthouse was all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, leather furniture, and art that looked like it belonged in a museum. Adrian sat directly across from her, his dark hair perfectly styled, his expression unreadable as the dealer shuffled the cards. "Buy-in is 10,000, one of the men said, a silver-haired executive whose watch caught the light. Elena's stomach dropped. She had maybe 3,000 in her savings account total. I'll cover her," Adrian said, his eyes never leaving hers. "She can pay me back if she loses." The way he said it made her spine straighten, like he already assumed she would lose, like she was just there for entertainment. Elena had spent her whole life fighting against people who underestimated her, first as a scholarship kid at a prestigious university, then as a young woman in an industry dominated by men twice her age. She recognized that look, that dismissive confidence. "Deal me in," she said. The first few hands were cautious. Elena folded twice, won a small pot on the 3rd round. She watched the other players carefully, noting their tells. The silver-haired man touched his wedding ring when he was bluffing. Another player, younger with nervous energy, bounced his leg under the table when he had a good hand. Adrian gave away nothing, his face a mask of cool control, but she noticed he tapped his index finger once against his cards when he was considering a fold. By the 2nd hour, she was up 15,000. By the 3rd hour, the table had narrowed to just her and Adrian, the others bowing out with varying degrees of good humor and surprise. The dealer laid out the river card, and Elena looked at her whole cards again. Pair of queens. The community cards gave her 3 of a kind. Adrian pushed a substantial stack of chips forward. 50,000. Elena's pulse quickened. Her 3 queens were strong, but his confidence suggested he had something better, or he was bluffing. She studied him, looking for that finger tap, any sign of hesitation. Nothing. He sat there like a statue carved from marble, beautiful and cold and utterly confident. Then she saw it. The tiniest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. He was enjoying this. "Call," Elena said, pushing her chips forward to match his bet. "And raise you 50. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Interest, definitely. The room had gone completely silent except for the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. "You're confident," Adrian said. His voice was deep, smooth like aged whiskey. "I have reason to be." He studied her for a long moment, and Elena forced herself not to look away. This close, she could see that his eyes were not just blue but had flecks of gray in them, like storm clouds. His jaw was strong, covered in deliberate stubble that somehow made him look both dangerous and refined. "All in," he said, pushing the rest of his chips forward. The pile in the center of the table had to be worth at least $300,000. Elena's hands wanted to shake, but she kept them steady. She looked at her cards one more time, then at the community card spread on the table. 3 queens. It was strong, but was it strong enough? Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Poker is not about the cards, Elena. It is about reading people, about knowing when someone is trying to make you afraid." Adrian was trying to make her afraid. She could see it in the way he sat back in his chair, completely relaxed, like the outcome was already decided. "Call," she said. Adrian flipped his cards. 2 kings. With the king on the board, he had 3 of a kind, strong hand. The other men who had been watching leaned forward. Elena turned over her queens. 4 ladies beat 3 cowboys, she said quietly as the dealer pushed the massive pile of chips toward her. Every time, the room erupted. The other players were laughing, clapping Adrian on the shoulder, making jokes about being dethroned. But Elena only had eyes for Adrian, watching his reaction. He stared at the cards for a moment, then slowly a genuine smile spread across his face. It transformed him completely, turning him from intimidating to almost boyish. "Well played," he said, standing and extending his hand across the table. Elena stood and shook it. His grip was firm, warm, and sent an unexpected jolt through her system. "Thank you for covering my buy-in." "Keep it," he said. "You earned it. I can't. You won fair and square. Besides, I have a feeling I will win it back eventually." His eyes held hers. "Come back next week, same time." "I am just here filling in for my boss," Elena said, acutely aware that his hand was still holding hers. "I work for the hotel." "I know," Adrian said. "I own the hotel." Elena's brain short-circuited. Adrian Jensen. The name suddenly connected to the signature on her paychecks, to the memos that came down from corporate, to the billionaire CEO of Jensen Hospitality Group that owned luxury hotels across the country. She had just beaten her boss's boss at poker for $300,000. "Oh my God," she whispered, his smile widened. "Does that change anything?" "It changes everything. I should not have played. This was completely unprofessional. I could lose my job, Elena." The way he said her name, like he was tasting it, made her stop mid-panic. "You did nothing wrong. I invited you to play. You played brilliantly, and I would very much like you to come back next week, as a player, not as staff." "Why?" "Because that was the most fun I have had at this table in 5 years, he said simply. "Because you are fearless and smart and you did not let me intimidate you." "Because I want a rematch." Elena should have said no. Every professional instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea, that mixing her personal life with her career would end in disaster. But she looked into those storm cloud eyes and heard herself say, "Next Friday." "Next Friday," Adrian confirmed. "I will have someone call you with the details." Elena left the penthouse an hour later after helping ensure everything was properly cleaned and locked up, her mind spinning. She had won $300,000. She had beaten a billionaire CEO at poker. And somehow, impossibly, she had agreed to come back and do it again. The following week dragged by with excruciating slowness. Elena threw herself into work, dealing with a bridezilla who wanted to rearrange the entire ballroom layout 2 days before her wedding, managing a plumbing crisis on the 15th floor, and training 2 new front desk employees. But every quiet moment, her mind drifted back to Adrian. To the way he had looked at her across that poker table, to the warmth of his hand in hers. She told herself it meant nothing. He was a billionaire. She was a hotel manager working her way up from nothing. They existed in completely different worlds. The poker game was just a game. nothing more. Friday arrived, and Elena spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing her outfit. She settled on black pants and a deep green silk blouse that her best friend Natalie had bought her for Christmas. Professional but not stuffy. Confident but not trying too hard. The penthouse looked exactly the same as the week before, but this time only Adrian was there when she arrived. He stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights, and turned when he heard her enter. "Elena," he said, and again she felt that strange flutter in her chest at the way he said her name. "I was not sure you would come. I said I would. People say many things." He walked toward her, and she noticed he was not wearing a suit jacket tonight, just a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. "Can I get you a drink? Just water, thanks. I want to keep my head clear." Smart. He poured water from a crystal decanter, then bourbon for himself. "The others will be here soon. I wanted a chance to talk to you first." "About what?" "About last week. About you." He handed her the water glass. "I had my assistant pull your file. I hope that does not upset you, but I wanted to know who had so thoroughly beaten me." Elena's defenses went up. "That feels like an invasion of privacy." "It was," Adrian said, surprising her with his honesty. "And I apologize, but I am glad I did because I learned some interesting things. You graduated top of your class from Cornell's hospitality program on a full scholarship. You have been promoted 3 times in 8 months at the Meridian. Your employee reviews are exceptional. You are building something real. Why does that matter to you?" "Because I built something real too," he said. "I inherited one hotel from my father and turned it into a portfolio of 50 properties. I did not have it handed to me. I worked for it. When I look at you, I see someone who understands that." Before Elena could respond, the elevator chimed and the other players began arriving. The game started shortly after, and Elena found herself seated next to Adrian this time instead of across from him. She was hyper-aware of his presence, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his arm occasionally brushed hers when they reached for chips. She won again that night, though not as spectacularly as before. Adrian won the second biggest pot. As the other players left, he asked her to stay. "I feel like I should mention that I am not trying to use poker as some elaborate seduction technique," Adrian said once they were alone. "I genuinely love the game, and you are a fantastic player, but I would be lying if I said I did not find you fascinating." Elena's heart was racing. "I find you fascinating too, but this cannot happen." "Why not?" "Because you own the company I work for. Because there are power dynamics here that make anything between us complicated and potentially problematic. Because I have worked too hard to get where I am to risk it all for." She stopped, unsure how to finish. "For what?" Adrian asked softly. He had moved closer, and she could see the gray flecks in his eyes again. "For something that probably would not work anyway." "You do not know that." "Neither do you." Adrian nodded slowly. "You are right, I do not, but I would like to find out, not as your boss, not as CEO, just as someone who cannot stop thinking about you." Elena wanted to say yes so badly it physically hurt, but she forced herself to be practical. "I cannot risk my career. If people found out, they would say I slept my way to the top. Everything I have accomplished would be diminished." "Then we will be careful," Adrian said. "I can be patient, Elena. I have not felt this way about someone in years, maybe ever. I am not going to let it go without trying." "What are you suggesting?" "Keep coming to poker night. Get to know me outside of work. Let me get to know you. And when you are ready, if you are ready, we will figure out the rest together." It was not a perfect solution, but it was something. Elena found herself nodding. "Okay, but just poker. Nothing else until I figure out how to navigate this." "Just poker," Adrian agreed. "But I am warning you now that I intend to win you over." The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Every Friday night, Elena went to the penthouse for poker. Sometimes it was just the regular group. Sometimes Adrian invited other players, business associates or friends visiting from out of town. Elena learned that Adrian was more than just a ruthless businessman. He was funny in a dry, understated way. He was generous, often comping hotel rooms for families in need or quietly paying for medical expenses for employees who were struggling. He was close with his mother, calling her every Sunday without fail. He loved old movies and could quote entire scenes from Casablanca and The Godfather. And he was true to his word about being patient. He never pushed, never made her uncomfortable. But the attraction between them grew stronger every week. A hand lingering too long when passing chips. Eyes meeting across the table with unspoken questions. Conversations that stretched long after the other players had left, ranging from philosophy to favorite childhood memories to dreams for the future. 2 months after that first game, Elena was promoted to manager of the Meridian, a position that came with a substantial raise and her own office. She suspected Adrian had influenced the decision, but when she confronted him, he showed her the performance reviews and profit reports. "You earned this," he said firmly. "I did not make you manager. Your work did. I just made sure the board saw what I saw." "Which is what?" "That you are exceptional." That night, after the poker game ended and the other players left, Adrian asked her to stay again. This had become their routine, these late-night conversations where the city sparkled below and the rest of the world felt very far away. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said. He looked nervous, which was so unlike him that Elena immediately tensed. "I am stepping back from day-to-day operations at the Meridian." "What? Why?" "Because I want to take you on a date. A real date. And I cannot do that ethically while I am your direct supervisor, even indirectly. I am promoting Michael Torres to regional director. He will oversee the Meridian and 4 other properties. You will report to him, not to me." Elena stared at him. "You are restructuring corporate hierarchy so you can ask me out. When you say it like that, it sounds insane. But yes, Adrian, that is," she did not know what it was, "romantic, crazy, both. I know it is a grand gesture," Adrian said, "maybe too grand. But I have spent 2 months getting to know you, Elena, and every Friday I sit across from you and want to reach out and touch your hand. I want to know what it is like to kiss you. I want to take you to dinner and not worry about who sees us. I want to be with you properly, and I am willing to reorganize my entire company to make that happen in a way that does not compromise your integrity or your career." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever done anything like this for her. No one had ever made her feel this valued, this respected, this wanted. "Ask me," she whispered. "Elena Kane, will you have dinner with me tomorrow night?" "Yes." Adrian's face broke into the most beautiful smile she had ever seen. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek with his hand. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes." He kissed her softly at first, tentatively, like she was something precious that might break. But when Elena wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him closer, the kiss deepened. It was everything she had imagined and more, making her head spin and her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian pressed his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since the moment you turned over those queens and looked at me like you had just conquered the world." "I felt like I had," Elena admitted. "You conquered me, that is for certain." Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, far from the glamorous hotels and high-end establishments Adrian usually frequented. He showed up at her apartment in jeans and a casual button-down, driving a modest sedan instead of the luxury cars she knew he owned. I wanted our first date to be normal, he explained, or as normal as possible considering. The restaurant was perfect. Dim lighting, checkered tablecloths, and the smell of garlic and fresh bread. The owner, an elderly Italian woman named Rosa, greeted Adrian with a hug and a rapid stream of Italian that made him laugh. "I take it you come here often?" Elena asked as they sat down. "My father used to bring me here when I was a kid," Adrian said. "Before the company got big, before everything changed. Rosa has known me since I was 8 years old and still treats me like I am that little boy sneaking breadsticks before dinner." Elena saw a different side of Adrian that night. He was relaxed, unguarded, sharing stories about his childhood and his father, who had died 5 years ago from a heart attack. She learned that Adrian had never planned to take over the hotel empire, that he had wanted to be an architect. But when his father died suddenly, he had stepped up to save the company from some bad investments and had somehow never stepped back. "You regret it?" Elena asked. "Sometimes," Adrian admitted. "I wonder what my life would have looked like if I had made different choices. But then something happens, like meeting you, and I think maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to." They talked until the restaurant closed, until Rosa physically shooed them out with affectionate scolding. Adrian drove Elena home and walked her to her door like a gentleman from another era. "I had a wonderful time," Elena said. "Me too." Adrian hesitated, then said, "I do not want to rush this. I know we have been building to this for months, but I want to do this right. I want to court you properly." "Court me?" Elena laughed. "What century are you from? I am serious. You are important to me, Elena. This is important. I want to take my time and do it right." Elena reached up and kissed him. "Then court me, Adrian Jensen. Show me what you have got." Over the next 3 months, Adrian showed her everything. He took her to art galleries and explained the paintings with surprising knowledge. He cooked her dinner at his actual home, a beautiful brownstone in a historic neighborhood, and she learned he was surprisingly talented in the kitchen. They went hiking on his rare days off, spent lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper and drinking coffee, attended a charity gala where Elena wore a dress Adrian had sent her and felt like Cinderella at the ball. The poker games continued every Friday, but now they were something different. Now, when Adrian looked at her across the table, she knew what it felt like to kiss him. When his hand brushed hers passing chips, she knew the strength in those fingers, the gentleness. The other regulars figured out pretty quickly that something had changed between them, but they were supportive, happy even. "About time," the silver-haired executive, whose name was George, said one night. "The sexual tension between you two was killing the game." Elena laughed, but Adrian just pulled her close and kissed her temple. "Jealousy is unbecoming, George." 4 months into their relationship, Adrian invited Elena to meet his mother. Margaret Jensen lived in a sprawling estate outside the city, and Elena was terrified. But Margaret turned out to be warm and sharp-witted, with the same blue eyes as her son. "So you are the girl who beat my Adrian at poker," Margaret said over tea in a sun-drenched conservatory. "I like you already, Mom," Adrian groaned. "What? It is good for you to lose sometimes. Keeps you humble." Margaret turned to Elena. "He told me about reorganizing the company's structure so he could date you. That is when I knew you were special. Adrian never does anything halfway." "I am learning that," Elena said, smiling at Adrian, who looked mildly embarrassed and completely endearing. "Do you love him?" Margaret asked bluntly. "Mom," but Elena did not hesitate. "Yes, I do." It was the first time she had said it out loud, though she had known it for weeks. Adrian's expression transformed, hope and joy and love all mixed together. "I love you too," he said, seemingly forgetting his mother was right there. "God, Elena, I love you so much." Margaret clapped her hands together. Excellent. Now, when is the wedding? We have been dating for 4 months, Adrian said. So, your father proposed after 6 weeks. When you know, you know. Elena and Adrian exchanged glances, and Elena saw her own thoughts reflected in his eyes. When you know, you know. And she knew. They did wait longer than 6 weeks, but not by much. 8 months after their first date, Adrian took Elena back to the penthouse where they had first met. The poker table was gone, replaced by a path of candles leading to the windows. The city sparkled below like scattered diamonds. Elena Kane, Adrian said, taking her hands in his, you walked into my life and changed everything. You challenged me, surprised me, made me laugh, made me want to be better. You saw past the CEO and the money and the power to the person underneath. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. Will you marry me? The ring was beautiful, a simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond, but Elena barely saw it through her tears. Yes, she said. Yes, absolutely yes. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that split the difference between Adrian's high society connections and Elena's more modest background. The wedding took place at the Meridian Hotel, in the rooftop garden that Elena had helped redesign. Her mother and younger brother flew in from Oregon. Adrian's mother cried through the entire ceremony. George and the other poker regulars served as groomsmen, joking that they had seen this coming from the first night. Natalie, Elena's best friend and maid of honor, whispered during the reception, "You know this is insane, right? You met him, beat him at poker, and now you are married to a billionaire. This is like a movie." "I know," Elena whispered back, watching Adrian across the room as he talked to her mother, making her laugh. "But it does not feel like a movie. It feels real. It feels right." "It looks right," Natalie said. "He looks at you like you hung the moon." "I look at him the same way." Adrian caught her eye across the room and excused himself, walking straight to her and pulling her into his arms. "Dance with me, Mrs. Jensen. We just danced 20 minutes ago. So, I want to dance with my wife. I am going to want to dance with you every day for the rest of our lives." They danced as the city lights twinkled around them, as their families and friends celebrated, as their future stretched out bright and shining ahead of them. Elena thought about that first night, how terrified she had been, how she almost did not sit down at that table. How one decision, one moment of courage had led to this. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked, his lips against her hair. "That I am glad I played poker that night. Best game I ever lost," Adrian said. "Life after the wedding was an adjustment." Elena kept working, something she and Adrian had discussed extensively. She loved her career and had no intention of giving it up. Adrian supported her completely, even when it meant late nights and weekend events. They bought a house together. Not a massive mansion, but a comfortable home with a big kitchen and a yard for the dog they immediately adopted. A golden retriever named Poker, because Adrian thought he was hilarious. The Friday night poker games continued, now held at their home instead of the penthouse. They had become a tradition, a way to stay connected to the beginning of their story. Elena still played, and she still won more often than not, which Adrian pretended to complain about but secretly loved. 2 years into their marriage, Elena discovered she was pregnant. She told Adrian on a Friday night after everyone had gone home while they were cleaning up chips and cards. "I have to tell you something," she said, her heart pounding. Adrian looked up from stacking chips. "You sound serious." "Is everything okay?" "Everything is more than okay. I am pregnant." The chips scattered everywhere as Adrian dropped the stack and pulled her into his arms. "Really? Are you sure? I took 3 tests, all positive." "We are having a baby," Adrian said, wonder in his voice. Then louder, like he needed to hear it again. "We are having a baby. they had a girl, born on a snowy December morning. They named her Sarah Margaret Jensen, after Adrian's grandmother and his mother. Sarah had Adrian's blue eyes and Elena's dark hair, and she wrapped both her parents completely around her tiny finger from day one. 18 months later, they had a boy, Alexander James, who had Elena's hazel eyes and Adrian's stubborn determination. Their house filled with laughter and chaos, with toys scattered everywhere and sleepless nights, and more love than Elena had known a heart could hold. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Adrian surprised Elena by having the penthouse suite set up exactly as it had been that first night. The poker table was back, the same jazz played through the speakers, even the same brand of bourbon sat on the bar cart. "I wanted to remind you where it all started," Adrian said, pulling her close as they stood by the windows. "5 years ago, you walked into this room and changed my life forever. You changed mine too. Do you ever regret it? The way it happened, how fast everything moved." Elena looked up at her husband, this man who had reorganized his company to date her, who had courted her with patience and respect, who was an amazing father and partner and friend. "Not for a single second. You are the best hand I ever played," Adrian laughed. "That was terrible. You love it." "I love you." They kissed as the city sparkled below them as their story came full circle. 5 years since a terrified hotel manager had sat down at a poker table and bluffed her way into beating a billionaire CEO. 5 years since Adrian had looked across that table and seen his future. In the years that followed, Elena continued to rise in her career, eventually becoming regional director herself, overseeing 10 properties. Adrian remained CEO but became more selective about his involvement, preferring to spend time with his family. They traveled the world, showing their children different countries and cultures. They hosted Friday night poker games in their home, now attended by friends and family, with Sarah and Alexander watching from the stairs until they were old enough to learn the game themselves. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to the penthouse again, a tradition now. The kids were with Margaret for the night, giving them rare time alone. 10 years, Elena said, leaning against Adrian as they looked out at the city. "It still feels like yesterday." "Best decade of my life," Adrian said. "Though I have to say, you have gotten even better at poker. I barely win anymore." "Maybe you are just getting worse." "Impossible. I am aging like fine wine." Elena laughed and turned in his arms. "You know what I realized the other day? We have been together for over 10 years, and we have never gotten tired of each other. We have never run out of things to talk about. How is that possible?" "Because we built something real," Adrian said. "Because you challenged me from the start and never stopped. Because we chose each other every day, not just the day we got married. Because we are partners in every sense of the word." "I would choose you again," Elena said. "In every universe, in every lifetime, I would sit down at that poker table and I would choose you. Even knowing I was going to invite you back every week, especially knowing that." They had 3 more children over the next few years, including a surprise set of twins that left them exhausted and deliriously happy. Their house expanded to accommodate the growing family. The poker games grew louder and more chaotic as the kids got older and demanded to play. Sarah turned out to have inherited her mother's talent for the game, while Alexander preferred to watch and calculate odds. Elena eventually became VP of Operations for Jensen Hospitality Group, a position she earned through years of hard work and innovation. She revolutionized their guest experience programs and implemented employee development initiatives that became industry standards. Adrian loved to brag about her accomplishments, often embarrassing her at company events by going on too long about her brilliance. "You are biased," she always said. "I am honest," he always replied. 20 years after that first poker game, Elena and Adrian sat in the penthouse suite again, now with their adult daughter Sarah and her fiancé, who had asked them for advice about marriage. "What is the secret?" Sarah asked. "You two make it look easy, but I know it cannot be." Elena and Adrian exchanged glances, having a full conversation in a single look, the way couples do after decades together. "It is not easy," Adrian said, "but it is worth it. Your mother and I have had fights, disagreements, tough times, but we always came back to each other." "We always chose each other," Elena added. "And we always respected each other. From the very beginning, your father saw me as an equal. He never tried to diminish me or control me. He supported my dreams while building his own. Plus, your mother can beat me at poker, which keeps me humble," Adrian said, making everyone laugh. "Is that really how you knew?" Sarah's fiancé asked. "Over a poker game. I knew the moment she called my bluff with 3 queens and looked at me like she owned the world," Adrian said. "I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with someone that fearless, that confident, that brilliant. I knew when he did not get angry about losing," Elena said. "When he smiled and asked me to come back. I knew he was someone secure enough to be with a strong woman, someone who would not feel threatened by my success. Also, he is really handsome," Elena added, making Adrian grin. "That did not hurt." On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party at the Meridian Hotel, the place where they had first met. The rooftop garden where they had married was decorated with photos from throughout their life together. Pictures of poker games and vacations, of babies and holidays, of ordinary moments that made up an extraordinary life. Elena stood with Adrian looking at the timeline of photos, her heart full to bursting. 25 years, she said. "We have been together for 25 years. Best 25 years of my life," Adrian said, pulling her close. His hair was gray now at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. "Ready for 25 more. Ready for 50 more," Elena said. "Deal," Adrian said, and kissed her as their children and grandchildren, 2 so far, with more on the way, applauded and cheered. The poker games continued, now a multi-generational affair with grandchildren learning to shuffle cards and calculate odds. Elena still won more often than not, though Sarah was giving her a run for her money. Adrian pretended to complain but loved every minute of it, loved seeing his wife and daughter team up to clean everyone else out. On their 30th anniversary, they returned to the penthouse one last time before Adrian officially retired. The building was being sold, renovated into luxury condos, and this was their final night in the space that had started everything. "It feels strange," Elena said, looking around the familiar room, "saying goodbye to this place." "It is just a place," Adrian said. "What we built, what we have, that goes beyond any location. You carry it with you everywhere. When did you become so wise? I learned from the best." They set up the old poker table one last time, just the 2 of them. They played a single hand slowly, savoring it. Elena won, of course, with a straight flush that made Adrian shake his head in admiration. 30 years and you are still cleaning me out," he said. 30 years and you still have that same look on your face when you are bluffing." "What look?" "Like you are trying very hard not to smile." Adrian did smile then, wide and genuine. "You know me better than anyone. I should hope so after 30 years. They packed up the cards and chips, turned off the lights, and took one last look at the city from the penthouse windows. Then they went home to their family, to the life they had built together. Elena thought about that terrified young woman who had walked into this penthouse 3 decades ago, who had taken a chance on a poker game that changed her entire life. She thought about every Friday night, every game, every moment that had led her here. She thought about the man who had invited her back every week after that first one, who had seen something in her that no one else had, who had loved her fiercely and faithfully for 30 years. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she would do it all again. Every hand, every risk, every choice that led her to Adrian. Because the best gamble she ever took was not calling his bluff with 3 queens. It was saying yes when he asked her to come back. It was saying yes to dinner, to love, to marriage, to building a life together. It was saying yes to Adrian Jensen, every single day for 30 years. And as they drove home through the city streets, their hands clasped together the way they had been for 3 decades, Elena knew she would keep saying yes for the rest of their lives. Because when you found someone who made you want to be brave, who supported your dreams while building their own, who loved you fiercely and faithfully through everything life threw at you, you held on tight and never let go. The poker games continued in their home for years more, with children and grandchildren gathered around, learning the game and the family stories. Sarah became a regional director herself, following in her mother's footsteps. Alexander went into architecture, fulfilling the dream his father had set aside. The twins found their own paths, one becoming a chef and the other a teacher. But every Friday night, as many of the family as could make it gathered around that old poker table. And every Friday night, Adrian would catch Elena's eye across the cards and smile that same smile he had given her 35, 40, 45 years ago. The smile that said she was the best thing that ever happened to him. The smile that said he would choose her again, every time. And Elena would smile back, her heart full of love for this man, this life, this family they had built from a single poker game and a whole lot of courage. On their 50th wedding anniversary, too old now for the penthouse nostalgia trips, but not too old for love, they sat in their backyard surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Someone had set up a poker table, of course, and a game was in progress with multiple generations playing together. 50 years, Adrian said, his hand in Elena's, both of them watching their family with pride and joy. Can you believe it? Some days it feels like 50 years, Elena said. Other days it feels like yesterday that you asked me to sit down at that table. Best decision I ever made. I thought I made the decision to sit down. You did, Adrian said, and I made the decision to invite you back. See, teamwork from the start. Elena laughed, the sound as bright and genuine as it had been 50 years ago. I love you, Adrian Jensen. I love you too, Elena Jensen. Always have, always will. As the sun set over their backyard and their family laughed and played cards, as the life they had built together hummed with joy and love and belonging, Elena thought one more time about that poker game so long ago. About taking a chance, about being brave, about saying yes to possibility. And she knew, with the certainty that comes from a lifetime of love, that she had played her cards exactly right. They had both won the biggest pot of all.